Oh, that is not the right. I don't know what just happened. Hello, everyone. I don't know what's going on here. Why am I giving me a title that doesn't make any sense? Oh, okay, there we go. Hello, I think. Give me a second. Okay. Ah, okay. I think, I think, I think, I think we're almost there. We're almost there. I know. Thank you for bearing with me while I try to get all this. Every time I think I have this figured out, yeah, something changes. And I'm not 100% sure why I'm not able to get this done smoothly. I haven't figured out if that's supposed to be a sign that I am not supposed to be doing this in this exact same way or what's going on. Let's see if this is working correctly. So I should be live right now. If I am live, please let me know what you see. It's because according to this, hold on. I might screw this all up, but hopefully this is working. Yay. Okay. Connect stream. What are you talking about? My stream is connected. Okay. I think I got it. I think I got it. Woo-hoo! Yay! Live streams is there's a creator that I like that always says live streaming is dynamic, but live streaming is dynamic. And that's the way it is, folks. And that's what happens when we're here. But it's all good because it seems to be working right now, and I am happy about it working. So, hello, hello, and hello. Welcome back. Welcome back. We are here. It is Friday. I just got out of our first mini discussion from the Plant Wisdom Book Club, where we're talking about when if women rose rooted, and it was a delightfully wonderful conversation. And now we are here. I do not know why that category is set as education, but the category for this is set as education, and I have no idea why. And I don't think I can change that. So we'll see what happens. But it's me, Tigrilla Gardenia. I am happy to be back here with you and to be kind of like, oh, there we go. That's why. Hold on. I'm just finding new things. Where should I call it? I hate this. They have like categories. My categories in YouTube are things like comedy, entertainment, film and animation, gaming, how to and style, music, news and blog. People and blogs. We're just going to call it people and blogs because education doesn't work. I mean, it is education to a certain extent, but seriously, like, are you going to come if I talk about education and if I talk instead about plant intelligence and plant consciousness and about plant sentience? That works better. Let's go with that. Okay. So if you're new around here, hello, hit like, hit all those beautiful things. I've got something to drink, which is really good because I just did my last call. And anybody who knows me, I usually drink a lot during my calls. It's very hot here too, so I'm probably going to be sweating. And so having something to drink is important. And I'm just excited. I'm excited that the live stream is finally working. I think I now understand how this thing is supposed to work, and hopefully I will remember it the next time we meet. But yeah, I am a little slow on this whole live streaming thing, probably because over in the Naturally Conscious community, which is where I normally do everything, is it's just a different setup, and I don't live stream over there anymore as much as I used to, even though I should because it's easier. but I wanted to live stream over on YouTube because I feel like this is just such important information to share. And I don't know why. I'm trying things. I've been modifying a lot in our environment over the last few weeks. Okay, so what I don't know how to do here is, oh, yes, I do. That is not a true statement. We actually have, hold on, I gotta find it. Give me a sec. Let's go over here. We have an actual intro, which I am going to pull up because I'm excited that we're on another platform, which means oops, that's not correct. My intro is actually going to work, and that's exciting to me. So, because, we have an intro, and so I want it to work. So give me a second so that I can find it and pull it up. I know I want to be all slick, and I'm just not. I'm just not. But because there's just so much that I want to talk about, and there's so much I want to do, and I end up, oops, I end up getting kind of, what's the right word? I don't know. I get not overwhelmed. There's so much happening in the world of plants, in the world that I want to share with you, that I want to talk about, that I want to experience, that I want to do things with. And it just, my cup runneth over. So today we are going to focus, and not a word I use very often, but we're going to talk about Monica Gagliano's closing keynote. We're going to watch it together for the Thinking with Plants and Fungi conference. But before we do all that, let's just share the intro. Let's give you an idea of what it is that we're here, and why you're here, and what it is that we're doing here together. Why are you not showing me this? Hello, I'm looking for it to share. And yeah, I am not a professional, as you can tell, when it comes to this. For whatever reason, there it is. Why are you not showing it to me as an option? I have like 1,001 little windows, and the window that I want to show you, actually, I'm going to do it in a different way. Ha 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 ha. Give me a second. I found another way of doing it. Hopefully I'm entertaining you. That's kind of my big goal. When I'm all into all this, is just to entertain. No, that's not true. My big goal is to share and to teach. So it's a video. So I just realized that I can actually share a video file with you. And that would probably be the fastest way to do it. Yay. Okay, I told you I'm learning how to do this again. Every single time I come, I say that to you, but I swear it is a learning experience, and I am learning how to do it. So here it is. Here's our beautiful intro. So excited. I'm going to turn my own video off so you don't have to look at me, and off we go. Welcome to Plant Consciousness Commentary. I'm your host, Tigrilla Gardenia, nature-inspired mentor, certified life coach, and the founder of the Naturally Conscious Community. Known as a world ambassador for plant advocacy, I've spent over a decade working closely with plants, sharing their practical wisdom to help you embody the elements of life that nourish your evolution. In these sessions, I explore plant neurobiology, cognition, intelligence, humanities, and the birth of critical plant studies, all through the lens of personal evolution. Together, we'll break down the science to understand the mind of plants and how their wisdom helps us reawaken our own plantness, ultimately living an authentic life as a being of nature. Yay, we're back. It also gave me a chance to put my hair up. I thought I could have my hair down, but where I live, which is in Damanhur in northern Italy, it is super freaking hot right now, like super freaking hot right now. And I have a beautiful ceiling fan on, but it's still super freaking hot. So that's what happens. It is. Okay, so a few warnings before we go. Obviously, if you're here, hi, hello, thank you, like, comment, subscribe, do all those kind of beautiful things that we normally do. We are going to listen to the keynote of Monica Gagliano in the Thinking with Plants and Fungi conference. Now, back up, because I have I did commentary on a few different of the speakers. because I just loved this conference. I have not watched this closing keynote because unfortunately, the final day was not able to participate. So I was excited when they finally published it. We listened what was it, 2 weeks ago? Because last week I had the Dumb and Her Fest. And so with the Dumb and Her Fest, I wasn't able to come online because I was in the middle of all of that, which was amazing. If you are looking for an experience of what does it mean to have a mission, to be connected in community, to all those wonderful things, please, 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 like look into coming to the Dumb and Her Fest next year, because it was just mind-blowingly amazing. And it was so, so, so good. That being said, so 2 weeks ago, we did commentary where we watched together. Hello, sorry, my thing just started up on its own. Where we watched together Michael Marter's keynote, which was super, super interesting as well, where he talked about whatchamacallit, what's her name? Emily Dickinson's poetry and her plantness, which was very similar to what we had come to when we read Emily Dickinson's Gardening Life, which was a book that we read during our Plant Wisdom book club. I'm closing off a bunch of stuff, just so you know, because my computer's being a little bit like, I need some help. And I also don't want any distractions while we're here. So I'm distracting myself for 10 seconds while I close off a million and one little windows that are all open and things like that. Anyway, this conference, which was held a few months back in Harvard at the School of Divinity, the Harvard School of Divinity, was fascinating on so many fronts. We listened to Giovanni Alloi's keynote, which was a great, great keynote talking about really being the colonial history of plants and of still life. And then we also listened to Michael Marter, like I said, talk about Emily Dickinson. And this is the closing keynote that was Monica Gagliano. Now, this is mostly a conversation with Rachel Peterson, who was the conference organizer, and she is also an amazing person. So I feel like this is going to be a great conversation, and I'm really looking forward to what it is that we're going to go to. So rather than hearing me yap on and yap on and yap on, although I have a million things I want to tell you about, but that's why I have the podcast. That's why we have the Naturally Conscious community. We have lots of places for you to come in and talk and such. So here, instead, what I'm going to do is share the screen of this keynote. I'm going to share my sound so that we have it, and then optimize for video sharing. Yes. And I'm going to hit share, and hopefully we've got it all now set up correctly. Yay. And let's go with it.
Center for the Study of World Religions, Harvard Divinity School.
I was saying that I've only known Monica Gagliano a month, but one thing I've learned about her is it's very hard to...
Okay, I just want to say my first thing I'm going to start with. Gagliano. Gagliano. I know that it's difficult, but I hear it all the time because Monica lives in Australia and most of her work is, of course, done in English. Monica is actually from Turin, from Torino, which is only about, 45 minutes from my house. Okay, she was originally from here. She lives in Australia now, so she doesn't live here, but she comes by every few years. And her name is Gagliano. I know that the GL in English sounds like it's Gagliano, but in Italian, li, which is literally when you start learning Italian, they make you practice it. Li is an interesting sound in and of itself, but it is, I just realized that you can't, hold on, you have to speed, there we go, sorry. Gagliano, not Gagliano. I know it's hard, but just try. Like, even if you just say Gagliano, it's still better than Gagliano, because then it sounds like you're gagging. But I don't know why. It was one of those things that just always, I mean, people butcher my name all the time. It's Tigrilla. In Italian, they think it's Tigrilla, which is fine. That's not that bad. And then, in other languages, it'll become Tigrilla, Tigril, yeah, there's a lot of them. So Monica Gagliano. I know she probably doesn't even care, but for whatever reason, I care. Can I be on the screen? Oh, look at that, how it makes me on the screen with her. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. We're going to find out. What if I do it that way? Ooh, look at that. I'm just discovering all these new ways of doing. I don't want that. I want this. Okay, I want this because I want to be on screen with you. All right, let's try this. Let's see how this works. This is going to be interesting. Bear with me. I'm getting excited.
When she has an idea, and the idea that we are playing with right now is a sort of literalization, a materialization of embranglement, which is a term we all learned earlier today in Banu's talk. So if you don't have a thread, grab a thread. Grab a ball of yarn, throw it around. You are all now officially embrangled. Yes, this is in violation of fire code. Yes, we do have scissors to cut you out if need be. And we'll begin very shortly. Once Monica makes her way to the stage. This will be our final, it's a conversation this afternoon, and it's a conversation that's serving two purposes.
No!
One is...
Oh, no.
Is to draw Monica out on her life and work, and also it will be a summative conversation. So Monica and I will be reflecting friends and some of the embranglements that we are all to and engaged in.
Okay, no, done. Okay. Everybody's just laughing still, so I'm like, I stopped it for a sec. Hold on. Apparently they're like all caught up with this word embranglement, which apparently must have been from a previous keynote, and I don't know. We're waiting for Monica to come on, so give me a second. Oh, there's Monica. But she's trying to come up on screen, but everybody's saying hello to her.
But introduce her now as she is engaging in a ritual that she will henceforth explain. Monica Gagliano is a research scientist.
Hold on. They're introducing her, so hold on. I gotta go back. Okay, sorry. Okay, let's just go to regular, like, I don't know, that's worse. Hold on, I'm looking at the different, let's just go to this one, share. Look, ooh, I don't want to show that. I want to show this. Okay.
So, for the sake of time, Monica Gagliano perhaps requires no introduction, but I will introduce her now as she is engaging in a ritual that she will henceforth explain. As a research scientist renowned for her pioneering work.
I don't know what Monica's doing in the middle of the screen, but it's hysterical.
Work in plant communication, cognition, and subjectivity. Recognized as one of Biohabitat's 24 most inspiring women of ecology, alongside Jane Goodall and Rachel Carson, her research challenges conventional boundaries of intelligence and inspires new ways of relating to the natural world. Monica's contributions include numerous influential science papers and books. Thus spoke the plant and The Mind of Plants, which she co-edited with John C. Ryan and Patricia Vieira. She is a research associate professor.
Oh, this is so annoying to me. I keep like, it creates this little, okay, hold on.
The Center for the Study of World Religion.
Okay, I have to move this to see if I can do this in a different way. Let me move me over here. I have to move all my setup because I had a setup that I really liked, and then yeah, everything kind of went in weird directions. So you got to give me one sec again. I know you're being really patient. Well, are you? Okay, so I believe if I do this and I go here, oh no, you're gonna do that. I don't want that either. Oh well, we'll try it. Let's go with it. Okay, this seems to be better.
Legends for the month of May, and I'm hoping to welcome her to the stage at any second now. Welcome, join me in welcoming Monica
Gagliano, no gag.
Gagliano. Okay, Monica, you want to catch your breath? Yeah, turn it on so we can hear you.
Yeah.
We're arriving. So,
How does it smell? Like, aside from my sweaty smell, like, what else do you smell? I thought we learned that you can't tell what it's like. But still, it's not going in,
sorry.
is it?
but we know it's not stinkhorn. We can say that much. Monica, I was hoping to begin by, actually haven't shared this with you. I'd love to share with you how I heard about your book and who introduced me to your
We
book.
also read her book
no,
as
that's
part of the
good,
Planet
that's
Book
good.
Club.
And I hope from there to do a bit of framing around how your work strikes me and how I think it strikes many people. And from there, we'll unfold the conversation about you and then solicit your reflections on what's going on and what has been going on here for the last 3 days. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Is there anything you want to say?
Them, you know, what it is that I spray on them, in just in case someone is freaking out,
Please
thinking that
do.
it's toxic or something.
Okay.
But in fact, what you're smelling is the key ingredient of one of the most famous perfumes in the history of perfumes, number 5. And the reason why I took it in as a plant, because it's a tree, so it was a bit difficult to actually bring the tree along with me. But this is the closest way that we get to encounter it. His name is, the local name is Palo Rosa. And he's a, family of the Palo Santo, which of course is facing extinction because of our very aggressive, spiritualized economy. Palo Rosa is already extincted in the wild because of our aggressive infatuation.
I didn't know that. I mean, I did know about what was happening with Palo Santo. As a matter of fact, many, many years ago, I was given a piece of Palo Santo when I was in a festival many years ago. We're talking about now more than probably around 15, if not more, years ago. I was given a piece. And I have to say, I've coveted that piece because I see Palo Santo everywhere. And I know about the plight of Palo Santo as a plant and the fact that, Key is almost extinct because of all of these different situations. But I didn't know anything about Palo Rosa. This is a new piece for me.
To the point that this is being produced as an essential oil and then by an indigenous community in the Amazon, and it's part of a project for trying to regenerate this tree, which is very important, not just for making perfume, but for all sorts of medicinal properties. And it's funny, and of course, following Michael is like, it's inevitable to of course, disarticulation, that tension between the two polarities. In making it pretty much extinct in the wild, the rehabilitation of this tree and realize that, we can't just plant the tree because just planting the seed doesn't do anything. It doesn't work. This is a very fiddly tree because we need to learn its relationship with other species that it likes to grow with and the mycelium. It grows with specific fungi. And so all of these it was extirpated and taken away. And now, ironically, we have to in doing that, we're actually getting angry. That's why I think she's here.
That's beautiful. I wish we told more of these types of stories. We tend to think about things like number 5, the wonderful world of Chanel is always, it's whatever, it's just perfume. But it's more than just perfume, right? It is this entire extrapolation, this extirpation from an ecosystem of this plant in order for something that we humans do not even consider connected back to the plant. Like, it's one thing, and I'm not saying this is better, but I'm just saying, at least with Palo Santo, we kind of know that it's connected to Palo Santo as a plant. And so when we start to talk about the dangers of Palo Santo being lost in the wild because of this, we can make an easier connection back to the fact of, oh, wait, Palo Santo, the plant, Palo Santo, this, whatever. But when we talk about something like Chanel, right, or like number 5, that perfume, we lose that connection. And this is the problem. This is that disconnection from nature that we keep talking about. So in just spraying something, look how Monica has brought in and this whole conversation about the connection between this perfume and this, you know, this extremely important a plant that is being lost just because we want to spray on some perfume and without even thinking about the plants.
Bringing us into intimacy with an actual plant and the story of a plant and its fungal relations. And I think that you've been very brave in asserting your own intimate relationship with plants, and at great cost, I think. And principally through this book, Thus Spoke the Plant. Who's read Thus Spoke the Plant? It's not a competition with Entangled Life. We did this earlier.
There is no competition. We already know that.
And this was actually the very first thing we ever read. I'm looking for Natalia.
Oh, and our reading group, our first book was Finding the Mother Tree.
I read it because I was introduced to it by a colleague and a friend and a mentor, Jeffrey Kripal, who is a scholar of mysticism and esotericism at Rice University, where I did my undergraduate work, and he loves this book. And you're thinking, wow, a scholar of mysticism and esotericism. He doesn't write about you in this book, but I think had your book come before he wrote this book, he would have. He wrote this incredible book called The Flip, Epiphanies of Mind and the Future of Knowledge. And in this book, he chronicles several scientists who encounter the unexplainable or have non-ordinary experiences, encounters, and they walk away with new insights about mind and matter and spirit and cosmos. And they often spend careers trying to make sense of these experiences. And one of my favorite examples in this book is actually the Hans Berger, who was a 19th century psychiatrist who actually invented the EEG.
Wow.
Does anyone know why he invented the EEG? He had a sudden experience who at the very moment he was almost crushed by a carriage, knew that he was going to be crushed by a carriage and sent him a telegram. And so for the rest of his life, he's convinced that this was a moment of telepathy and he's trying to figure out why. But he doesn't abandon science. He is still a scientist, but the pursuit of understanding this episode caused him to produce the technology that would eventually lead to the EEG, which is a machine that's in every single hospital and is to things like, you know, epilepsy. And
Fascinating how somebody who wants to understand a mystical experience goes to technology to try to answer it. I'm so curious as to what else he might have done in order to understand that connection. Personally, I've done an EEG many years ago, and you put like this goop in your head. Anyway, but that's not the point. I'm just curious as how like trying to understand telepathy ends up being the forefather of the EEG. But it makes sense when you think about it. It really does.
This because in this book and what I see in your work is these kind of people who have these flips, as he calls them, but they're not a disavowal of science or scientific training, but they're kind of bimodal. Like they come out of them both radically critical and deeply sympathetic of wanting to understand more, to be a more capacious scientist. And I were walking, eating lunch the other day, and you said something like, you know, I'm a formally trained scientist. I did science. I did that. I do that. And then, so yeah, just would you characterize that change? And do you feel that resonance of like the flip that I'm describing in this book?
The flip does conjure like something flipped, and you're gone lost somewhere. And maybe
you're not lost.
And maybe you do. You need to get lost for a little while to realize what it is that is worth.
I agree with that.
Retaining what it is that is actually useful.
Mm-hmm.
And because what I realized, and I have had these flips too many times now to count. But what I realized is that, there was a lot of stuff that it was handed over to me as part of my training, for which I'm absolutely very grateful. but actually it's done its work. And with many things, and plant again, a beautiful example is like dying doesn't mean that that's the end. Dying could be also a beginning in a different way. It could be a continuation, but in a different form. And so, but you need to be able to let go of those flowers that now are no more, or those leaves that now don't serve you, or they serve a different purpose. We saw it yesterday, like don't take the leaves away because they have another purpose, but they don't need to stay attached to the tree. And so I shedded many leaves and I let go of many flowers. And in the process, all I can say is that because now often people say like, so how would you define yourself now and what do you do? And it's like, no idea. But it doesn't mean that I'm clueless. I'm perfectly, like, consciously deciding to sit in this space, and it's not comfortable, and it goes against everything I was trained for, because I'm supposed to be the one that knows. I'm a scientist. We heard it as well on the first day, like, we know this. So that's the imprinting that I have. And every time I'm approaching something, I had to be tempted to go there and or consciously acknowledge that.
I think this is such a
But actually, I
beautiful,
do not know this.
beautiful piece of understanding, and something that I feel like we need to talk much more about. In some ways, it's kind of the discussion that we're having in If Women Rose Rooted. Like I said, we just got back. I just had the first mini discussion that for this book, which is we're reading as part of the Plant Wisdom Book Club. Oh my God, there is this display of acrobatics by 100 swallows right outside of my window right now that is mesmerizing. I am trying so hard to concentrate on what I want to say relating to what I consider to be this moment of almost mystic reflection that Monica's talking about, but the swallows are just completely engulfing my. I wish I could turn the camera around easily and show you because they are just so beautiful. I love this. This happens every single summer where they come to be around Gary the Silver Fir, and every evening I get this amazing display. I know I've talked about it before, but I don't have a really strong connection to birds. Birds is not, I mean, I like birds. I don't have anything against birds, but I'm just saying it's not kind of part of my, nature wandering. I don't go bird watching. I don't feel called to look for birds. But these swallows, I have to say, since I've been living here every year, watching them come and come back and experience and what they do and how they fly and how they move. And there was a hawk earlier that was roaming around also. And just their shape, their way of being, I'm completely lost and mesmerized in. And also the relationship with Gary, because Gary is like the focal point, and this going back and forth with Gary I find just so mesmerizing. And I can't say, I want to say I've learned so much, but it's like I couldn't even vocalize what it is. There's just like a thing inside of me, which I think is what Monica's talking about here, that I find so fascinating. And Sharon Blackie talks about it in If Women Rose Rooted. It's that period of space that I have learned to appreciate of, I don't really know, not that I don't know who I am in the sense of like I'm lost, but I don't feel like everything I have labeled myself or thought of myself as up until this point accurately reflects what I feel and what I think about myself right now. Not because I've lost something, but more because there's an expansion or a transformation or a movement that's happening. And I'm trying to, rather than trying to force myself to go through it quickly, I'm trying to just be in it. And I feel like that has been something that working with plants has taught me so much of. I actually used this description, I think, in a conversation I was having recently with somebody, where I was talking about how during last weekend, during the Dom and Her fast, I found myself on the final day realizing that a kind of way that I had always been a part of my characteristic of like, I'm in the middle of something, it doesn't matter if it's a concert, an event or something, and yet there's a part of me that kind of wants to be like is just curious as to how I will feel when it's over. And so there's a part of me that's already projected towards the fact that this is going to come to an end. And during Dom and Her Fast, I realized afterwards that I didn't do that. I was in it the entire freaking time. And it was so gorgeous. And I felt so connected to the natural world's presence, to my plantness in that. And I feel like that's a kind of another aspect of what Monica is describing. And even in my own transitions, in my own work and experience and how I'm growing and all these different parts and with my clients, I love seeing that when we drop into that part of presence that allows us to just be in it, even in the transitions, even in the ecotone, even in the I don't really know what I am today, but that's not because I'm lost. That's because I'm enjoying the fact of the move and the transition that's happening. That was a really long way of saying things, but it's hopefully it makes sense. I'd love to hear your thoughts of it. So please just drop something in the comments because I'm really curious as to do you try to just go through it and like come back to the other label, or do you give yourself the space to enjoy where you are in that moment?
And what else can it be expressed here? What else can I discover about myself, about these other and the space in between? And I was talking to Jacob some point, yeah, and I really appreciate, there was so much throughout the conference to like, yeah, I have notes and notes, and I was talking to Jacob earlier today, and I was like, I really appreciate this tension between these polarities that he describes so well in the work of Arber, right? And yeah, this tension is precisely what I feel, that's what life is.
Exactly.
And so I want to be right there in
This presence.
Michael was talking about this middle place, and also, as Michael pointed out for Emily Dickinson, yeah, it looks like you're totally incoherent. But actually, the job I think at hand is to go into that total incoherence and then maybe try to find the words. And that's why probably poetry is really the best thing, but actually I'm so terrible at poetry that I won't try. But trying to find that is resisting you to give it a form. And that's because then it becomes like, oh, now we know this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, but actually, no. And it's this constant back and forth.
Yeah.
So sometimes I totally look mad and it's okay. And some of the times I totally look like absolutely boring and it's okay. It's those, those extremes. But my intention is
And that's what I call your plantness. I call that in between, not that in between, but that presence of just being in it. That to me is your plantness. That is that inner plantness that I carry and that relationship that allows me to sit, that I tap into, and that I'm just there, present.
So I'm thinking,
intention is to sit in between.
So I'm thinking of two things. One is your boring polarity, and maybe we'll just like give a little lip service to your quote unquote boring polarity. And I'm thinking about that in dialogue with, Merlin's invocation in our conversation on the first day, that the sciences they're a multiplicity. It's not science, it's the sciences. And you are still operating within boring science. Like you're still publishing scientific papers with scientific collaborators. And, in the spirit of kind of starting with the latest and greatest of that so-called boring science, and at the risk of doing the whole like, now we know thing that Merlin warned us against. But I'm wondering, can you talk about, whichever one you want to start with first, your recent eclipse study?
Yeah, I want to hear about
since there's an orchid right
the orchid study.
Tell us, so you haven't abandoned that boring so-called scientific side. Is there one of those studies that you feel like is useful to presence?
Well, the orchids work is actually, I feel like I'm the research assistant of a very smart younger colleague, and she is the orchid whisperer. And so for me, it's a great honor to be able to be involved in her research and and contribute in whichever way I can. And so we have a lot of conversation, discussions, and of course, orchids are very mischievous, as we know. So it's fun to work with them. The eclipse work, it's I guess it's a little bit more interesting because it brings up questions that are much bigger than just the data that are there. And for those who haven't seen it, because it was literally got published while I was on the plane to come here, basically the work was done in the Dolomites in the north of Italy, and the original study was about something totally different. As is often the case with science, you start with one thing and it's like, oh, but what about this? And then you go off, and that was the trail that maybe was more interesting to follow. So the path that you're not meant to take, but then you do. And so we had this equipment which of itself, even without looking at the data of itself, the equipment itself, the infrastructure that was built by my colleagues who are physicists, technologists, engineers, it's already a fit of science as it is, because it allows us to monitor in real time multiple trees. So basically we were able to follow in real time what was happening at the electrical level or bioelectrical, which sums up a little bit the state of the tree and what's happening for the tree, both at the individual level, but mostly, or most importantly, as a network. So we're seeing both individuals and the collective. And of course, then it happens that there was an eclipse, the equipment was running, and it was like, well, it's quite convenient, isn't it? And let's have a look at this data, because of course the eclipse is a very big celestial event. And we know the plants respond very strongly to gravity. And so this is a gravitational event, really, because you got the sun and the moon pulling together. And in fact, the physicists know very well, they have a name for that pull, and they're called gravimetric waves. And during eclipses of that kind, especially when it's a solar eclipse, you have the sum of those gravitational pulls together. It's the maximum pull of gravity that you can have. And eclipses are interesting also from many perspectives, like in history they have stopped wars. We know when there is an eclipse, we are all like, like gathering, like, because we have to see it. And it's so funny because really it's like it lasted such a short time, and we all like travel to see these two planets moving and kind of passing each other. They pass each other all the time. It's just like, oh, now I can see it, so it's happening. And but what happened is that because we had this long baseline, we were monitoring already this system for a while. And then the eclipse arrives, and then the eclipse goes away. So we have a long baseline before, then we have that event, and then we have the after. And so the before allowed us to see the natural variability of the individual trees in this network of trees. And of course there is variability. It was very clear the circadian cycle, so night, day, what's happening with like photosynthesis, perspiration, all of the normal physiologies, I guess, that we would expect. And then something happens just before, and just is relative. It was 14 hours before the eclipse arrives at this location on the north of Italy. So the sun is actually closer to Australia than not in Europe. Some trees change their
Okay, I'm stopping because
behavior.
I'm taking notes. I have read parts of the paper. I didn't read the whole paper because I want to read the paper with you. So that it sounds like Monica just gave us our next paper to read that we're going to read together. I actually have it open right now because it was something that I've been referencing, because I'm convinced that in part of what they found with this paper we're going to talk about is also going to, in my opinion, I have to figure out if there's a way for us to test it, going to show what we here in Damanhur talk about that happens during the solstices, because it sounds very similar what they discovered during the eclipses as to what we find in the solstices. But I'll tell you afterwards what that is.
What I mean change is like tenfold change. So it's not just like, oh, it was a little wiggle. Are you sure that it's not just the same, or like the light kind of change, or something about the 10 change to Australia, they're not in Europe. Some trees change their bioelectrical behavior. And what I mean change is like tenfold change. So it's not just like, oh, it was a little wiggle. Are you sure that it's not just the same, or like, you know, the light kind of change, or something about the temperature?
It's a big wiggle.
No,
wiggle.
It's a big wiggle. And 14 hours before. So they're not just, oh, the light went out or the temperature dropped. They detected something else. And then we can see, because we're monitoring as a network, we can see that these signals actually then spreads through the network. And the results of that is that all of the trees that we are monitoring suddenly are doing the same thing.
Oops, sorry.
If this was an animal system, we would say that what happened 14 hours before would be called anticipation, which is a key feature of then synchronicity, so synchronized behavior, which is what you would see when birds flock together or school of fishes, and what we see when we all synchronize in a dance or something. There is an anticipation, and then the following cooperation and synchronization of behavior occurs. And then, of course, that happens during the eclipse. And then the eclipse moves on, and the trees slowly, they just return to do their own business as individual trees. So basically, this was amazing because first, we were not expecting anything. So it's always amazing to have something like that when you're not expecting anything. But also, we were literally watching, in a way, again, collapsing these two polarities, collapsing the necessity of being, are you looking either at the tree, at the individual, or are you looking at the forest? In that moment, you had both. The forest is made of individual trees, but the individual trees don't exist because in reality, because of their connection, just like you are now, they're one system, one unit. And during the eclipse, they behave like one entity, one agent. The other part, of course, which is to me mind-blowing, one of the colleagues is an older professor in quantum physics, and he was, and I'm using this term not as like a, a new agey, yeah, quantum physics, I understand what it means. I have no idea. That part I had to trust that he knew what those formulas were doing. But he was one of there are kind of like, I think, 8 or more models that use different physics to describe the activity of and the coordinated behavior of neurons in the human brain. So this is one of the 8 or whatever models that describe human brain activity. And so just for fun, we said, well, we got this data. Why don't we see how it fits in your model? And we never seen anything fitting so well, especially because we are talking about 2 systems that are apparently so totally different, but maybe they're not. And so again, collapsing scale as well. You're seeing this scale and that scale, and something that nature is, obviously decided.
So I want to stop here for a second because I want to share with you, just in case you don't know, why I'm excited about this study beyond just everything she just mentioned, which I think is, of course, fascinating, as you can imagine. There's so many different pieces that I want to touch on. But one of the other pieces is that, so from Davenpurtian philosophy, we purposely, during solstices, so the summer solstice and the winter solstice, we don't cut any kind of plants, trees down, because our belief and our understanding of what's happening is that the trees are communicating across the synchronic lines, basically sending and receiving everything that has occurred in the 6 months prior, right? So about 3 days before and to 3 days after, more or less, we do not cut unless it's absolutely 100% necessary, because we believe the plants are carrying out, they're prepping themselves, and then they're having this moment, and then they're having this function, which is they're sending out across the synchronic lines to all the planets that contain life, as in human, not just humanoid, but like human as in a divine spark, and receiving from other planets. So they can hold all of the information necessary, like all the information, not just from our planet, but from the cosmology, the whole universe. So to me, the idea that she caught this during an eclipse, first of all, from our side of it is, hey, we need to do more experiments of whether or not it's not like experiments on our level as to whether or not this happens also during eclipses and not just during solstices. And on a science perspective, I would love to see this experiment redone during a solstice, because I feel like the same thing is going to happen 14 hours before, right? Maybe, you know, there's this synchronization of bioelectrical behavior, which is what she's describing, which to me is I'm preparing for the transmission. Then everything gets synchronized while I'm transmitting and receiving. And then slowly the plants go back to their normal thing. I feel like this is a step in the direction that proves what we, from an esoteric perspective, have been experiencing and have been able to communicate. So actually, solstice is a really interesting time to try to communicate with trees, because you can get into this flow and receive and send and be able to have this other kind of connection to the synchronic lines. But can you imagine if we could use the same type of study that she's talking about to prove this fact, to prove this piece that has been understood on an esoteric mystical level? I just feel like it's so cool. So freaking cool. Oh, sorry. Oh, wow. I don't even know what I just did. Hold on. Sorry. I thought I would hit play again, and I was like, no, wait, I have to actually share it again, because I just realized that I shared. Hey, like I said, I'm still trying to get used to this.
That's how it felt.
I want to keep with this. I love that we're sticking with the Nicholas of Cusa coincidence of opposites. Thank you, Jacob. Frame here. There's another set of polarities that you and your work and in your life have tried to collapse. And I think maybe I'll just read directly from Thus Spoke the Plant. And that is this, the coincidence of opposites, that is subjectivity and objectivity. Through what seemed an impossible feat, the marriage between the objectivity of the scientific method and knowledge and the subjectivity of transcendental experiences and intuition not only proved to be absolutely possible, but also incredibly profound and an exciting coup that is seen. And I want to talk to you about that collapsing of subjectivity and objectivity in the context of a conversation we had on the first day. Peter's panel, Zoe posed this question of how do we get our humanness out of the way when we're studying plants? And you raised your hand and I think made a beautiful intervention. No, we need to reckon with or use that as a gateway to empathy. And that, of course, is something that feminists and STS scholars have been saying for a long time. But yeah, I want to draw you out on that a little bit more, that how you collapse those two things in your work and getting that dual movement of putting the humanist aside and also
see, and this is where I feel like sometimes we get over. I'm very curious as to what her answer is going to be. But before that, I just want to frame something that I feel like is important, which is, yes, there is the humanness, but really as humans, we're animals. And I think that before we can even, I think for now, given the amount of conditioning in our human world, personally, I feel like these are stages to a certain extent. And I feel like to get to my plantness, I did have to step my humanness aside and connect back into my animalness. That allowed me then to go deeper into my plantness and then to re-enter humanness, but from a different point of view. This is my own personal experience, and you know, is that our humanness and the conditions of our society and such are just so strong that sometimes it's better, if not easier is maybe not the right word, better is probably hard too, but it's something to experiment with, whether, yes, for some of us, we can go straight from our humanness into these connections. But I just feel like it's so important to me, it's been to connect to who I am as an animal and who I am as a plant, and then come into humanity so that I can free myself from the conditioning and I can more approach the ecosystem that I'm in and in a more profound way, and with the pureness of my human characteristics. I don't know if that makes sense, but it makes sense in my mind. It's one of those hard things to put into words, but hopefully that can start to enter into the conversation in a different way.
Juggle that. How do you resolve those opposites?
I don't resolve them, first of all.
Yeah.
I don't think that they want to be resolved, and that creates tension.
Yeah.
So, and again, if I can stay with that tension, I don't mean that I'm always successful, but at least there is an attempt to stay with that tension, then I know I'm onto something, you know? And then I guess I would really want to honor and mention that something that I felt it was missing from the conversations, except for today we had a beautiful intervention, and I already thanked them, is the indigenous perspective, but not just as a lip service. Oh, and by the way, there are also indigenous people somewhere doing this. But it's like, this is the perspective that has got so much to teach, because as it was said before, it was like, it's not even an issue. It's like, there are the quintessential, at least the people that I have interacted with in Australia, South America, even here, they're like, they are full-on scientists. You know, the amount of knowledge, as we would consider like the knowing of things, it's incredible. And yet they are totally also engaging with not only the modern humans as the plant, the animal, the bacteria, the fungus, but also with the beyond the visible, beyond what we consider matter. So I think that it was in one of the conversations this morning, I can't remember if it was Jessica Lee that was talking about, sorry, I did write notes, but someone this morning, I think, mentioned that colonialism basically started with, oh, let's remove the people from the land. And we know it's been done like, that's the strategy. And then let's remove the spirit from the living. So remove the spirit from plants, remove the spirit from nature. And then let's make land as a resource. And I think that what I'm learning by engaging with indigenous, both ontology and epistemologies, is, okay, so I'm not in the position to give back the land, but I can help where I can. But I am in a position where I can help the conversation towards its own wisdom in its own spirit. And certainly I can engage with the plants and the animals and the fungi and the bacteria and listen to where is the spirit gone and what does it want to say. And what you might discover is that the spirit actually, colonial views are insisting that they succeeded in removing spirit from the living and removing the spirit from the land. But that's one of the stories that is being spun, and we spin lots of stories, and I guess I'm trying to, using a different yarn and spin a different story that is actually being told over and over again by a certain component of humanity. And I'm trying to learn from that.
Thank you for naming the
I'm
lack
glad
of
also she
indigenous
said that. I
perspectives and
think
conversations.
as I'm also in my own work, in my own kind of experiences now, I'm realizing that it's better to, how do I say this? I find it more respectful for me to call out where my limitations are and then give space to those as I'm listening again to another book by Robin Wall Kimmerer, and I'm really enjoying kind of getting back into connection with the work that she has always done. I love the fact that she speaks obviously of her people and such. And I think we can only speak for that which we enter into deep contact with. And so therefore that connection to the indigenous culture is so important. And it should be spoken by those that have that relationship and that connection. So I can honor, respect, and give space for, and not have to step in and take over for it and speak on behalf of something that I don't feel like is mine to speak on behalf of.
This question, your remarks just now, and the question that Liz von Volkenberg posed, this kind of what is, and obviously say there's been an effort to put this category of science, because on sometimes I feel in you, it's like your project is a reinvention of science, but then there's also a moving outside of the modes of knowledge that science rewards and acknowledges. So like, maybe that's another coincidence of opposites, but is your project fundamentally, let's expand what science deems permissible, or is it, there are just other things that are not within the realm of science, but are valid forms of knowledge? What is science and what is not for you?
I think it was this morning again, the West is a project, not a place. And so Western science is a recent project. And we don't have to go too far back to realize that what science
Hallelujah
is
for
today
saying
is
this.
not
I
what
feel like
science
this
was even
question is
yesterday.
just so colonialism in and of itself as a question, because the truth of the matter is that science is all of it, in the sense that if you go back to the period of alchemy as science, or if you go into Western medicine, to Eastern medicines, if you go in, there's so much more. If you do indigenous, that is still a form of science. They did experiment, they did, find methods and processes. And so it is all science. I just don't understand why we need to limit things so harshly.
A couple of centuries ago. And I think, and it's been mentioned several times by different people as well throughout the days, the call for making, the making and the construction of science or even like of scholarship as a construction of bodies of knowledge that now are separate disciplines. It's like, I think it was you, Lee, that I don't know about, the history of my own practice, or the history of philosophy, or what happened with the science that was here before the West invented science. And so I think my attempt, unconscious mostly, can think of it properly, is
Exactly.
yeah, I don't want to exclude anything. If Western science, which at some point it will end and it will become an old story, like all the other stories that we've been telling, okay, this is no longer how we do it, and now we're gonna include the things that we don't see, then, my approach will become totally redundant. And I said this many times, especially when I started working with plants. I thought, the moment my research became absolutely, utterly redundant, I really succeeded. I really did something with my science. Because it means that we don't have to keep asking these questions, which for anybody that has been outside and gardeners, or just every time you eat your food or you breathe, you would know that it's like some of this intellectual
Yes.
entertainment. Really.
And this is why
And yeah,
in the
we
last year, thankfully, thanks to one of the projects inside of NCC, and then subsequently finding a new teacher, I've moved personally more towards a mystical approach. I feel, and I am by no means like at the end of my not scholarly, but like my researchy part. Of course, there's still so much that I'm learning, but I'm weaving in this whole being in stillness with the beings that I'm working with and studying, and like really looking to listen, because it's so necessary. It's so necessary.
enjoy it. There's nothing wrong with that. And, some of us, that this is our job. But actually, at the end, it's like, I think fundamentally, we all know. Otherwise, we wouldn't just go for a walk when we don't feel so crash hot. And we wouldn't, I can't wait to breathe the fresh air, or, like we all know. And I think this speaks of something that goes beyond the things that we can touch. And science has got such a long history of things that we didn't, were invisible. Then we invent something that is like, oh, now that is not invisible anymore. And so we can take it from the metaphysical and become physical. And the metaphysical of today is actually very tangible. It's just that West refuses to acknowledge that there are technologies and methodologies which are very precise. They're mostly of the indigenous kind, and we just don't want to acknowledge them. So my project is to acknowledge them and see what I can learn, and being very aware of not appropriating them, because I am a Western white woman born in Europe and, you know, traveled and lived in many places, but fundamentally I have that luggage in me.
And that's, see, that
So-
last phrase, I
don't know
mean,
if this
I wasn't
answered the
born in
question.
Europe,
It
but
absolutely
that last phrase is exactly what I was saying before about how, as much as I admire and want to integrate and give space and to all the indigenous wisdom, I am not the keeper of that wisdom. And so I want to collaborate, to work with, to explore, to experience, to have conversations with, to test things with people that hold that knowledge.
No, it absolutely does. And actually, it reminds me of a paper I didn't have time to ask Merlin about. In 2020, Merlin wrote a really sweet paper in a social sciences journal about the enigma that Richard Schulte's enigma, I'm putting in scare quotes, that Richard Schulte is a famous ethnobotanist encountered when he went to the Amazon and was looking at groups that used ayahuasca, because he could not distinguish between different vines, and he was certain that there was no way that anyone could visually distinguish between these two vines. And the groups that he was working with were like, duh, like, and at a distance, they could tell them apart really easily. And this is, and for him, it's an enigma, but it's like, it's only an enigma if you don't believe that they're talking to these plants. Like ayahuasca is something that they're apprenticing to and learning from and engaging. And so, yeah, I think that word enigma is so interesting in this context, because it's like, of course, Richard Schultes couldn't distinguish between these plants in the way that his informants could, because of a totally different life world and a totally different valuation of sources of knowledge. So plants talk to you.
I talk to everyone, but, you know, I listen. That's the only difference. They talk to everyone, but I listen sometimes.
Yeah, thus spoke the plant. It's not a metaphor.
No,
Tell me more about that.
I don't like metaphors. No, I do like metaphors, but in this case, no. And with most of I would say all of my work, I try to make it clear that when I write about plants, doing things, thinking, feeling, speaking, being wise,
Yes.
I mean it literally. And they have surprised me too many times to be so arrogant and deny their wisdom and their presence. And in fact, I am not only, you know, for me, they started like, oh, what is a plant? I don't even know. Because I wasn't trained. I'm an animal ecologist and I worked with fish. So coral reefs, underwater, that was me, and which I loved. And so the encounter with plants has been a gradual, I feel like they've been literally teaching me. And from the very beginning, when I had to stop being a marine scientist, and I thought, oh, well, you know, that's the end of my career. It was pretty short. I thought I really loved, I always wanted to be a scientist. And now that and that's it, okay. And it was actually, you know, a very common plant, a chili plant in this new garden. It's like, you can work with us. Anything about plants, we'll teach you.
So that's kind of how
And
I
they
feel.
also
Like
are very
I
literal when they
am a
say.
city girl. I grew up in a city. I had no idea. And it was like, don't worry. Come. We'll teach you everything you need to know.
And so it's been a progressive thing of like, okay, plants as teachers, and which is also a concept that exists very deeply in indigenous context. And then plants as collaborator and co-creators. And so my next move would be like when I will publish my next paper, if I will ever publish another paper, it would be acknowledging also the plants co-authors. And I know other colleagues who have started acknowledging people who work with mountains or rivers, acknowledging the authorship of that river, because without them, there will be no story. It's their story too. So the human and modern humans are both authoring and co-creating.
And this is another
So
natural progression that I see all over the place. And I love so much as she's vocalizing it, which is when you start working, and permit me for saying for a second, and I hope I'm wrong, please, please, please let me a comment and comment and let me know if I got this wrong, because I hope I did. I find that people who work with animals, probably because, again, animals are very close to us as humans, tend to stick to animals. Depending, I guess, maybe on what kind of animals. But like, especially if you work with mammals, you'll stick to mammals and you'll sort of like only see the mammal you're working with as the intelligent being that they are. When you work with other beings, plants, fungi, bacteria, slime mold, whatever, it's almost inevitable. And again, I'm generalizing, so please take my generalization with a generalization of the generalization that it is. It's almost impossible for you to just stop there. You start to expand and start to see the more than human world you start to see other kin for who they are, for who each individual is. And I just find that so powerfully beautiful. I love it so much. But I'm curious as to if you find the same thing. I find that mammal scientists tend to stick to mammals and only the mammal that they're working with is intelligent. And if you work with plants or other species, then all of a sudden you start to see rivers and mountains and you start to see all these pieces, which is the evolution of Reconnect with the Plant Wisdom, right? The podcast is really about that. I've had, guests on now like Eric Inman, who's talked about rivers, and I just had, I'm soon will be coming out an episode with Elspeth Hay, who talks about fire, and there's just so much more. And I've had some water people. It's just amazing. You start to see the world for the life that exists and the intelligence and the wisdom and the experience, and you can bring it all into yourself. I think most likely because you're communicating in a completely different way, but that's just my guess as to why.
The vision is to integrate all of these different bodies of knowledge, which are both human and non-human or more than human.
Are you optimistic about other people taking up these moves that you are modeling and proposing?
I don't care. No, in the sense that I wouldn't, a part of me, of course, would like, I'm going to do this amazing project. Everyone is going to love it. They're going to think it's the best thing that ever hit the earth. And everyone is going to integrate it, and we will do things differently. That's the naive part of me, and the child that is like, how come that you don't want to play? It's like, there's so much to play here. How come you don't want to play? But let's say the mature adult, it's not that it's like dumping water on the fire, but it's more like realistically probably it's not going to happen as quickly as you would like, and I have very little patience. So for me, it should have happened already. Before I do it, should have happened. Yeah. And yet I want to get my mature adult to have the opportunity to be surprised. Because with the work with the plants, for example, 15 years ago, when we started the work on the plant bioacoustics, so the actual acoustics, the voice of the plants, I shouldn't take I'm removing the little inverted comma.
Did you just
see,
do this?
I just did this.
Did Monica Gagliano
you
just
see,
scare
like,
quote?
No. But so the plants are able to use sound as part of their ecological world and interactions, and mediate it through sound, both that they emit and they listen to. Well, when we first started, you can imagine some of the comments. And, oh, you're doing Stevie Wonder thing. Or, oh, this is the secret life of plants all over again.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. Oh, then, of course, I got called hippie and pseudoscientist and all sorts of, and other adjective that is not worth repeating right here. But it didn't take, not even 15 years. And there are at least 3 labs in the world dedicated to plant bioacoustics. Yeah. And of course, history repeats, so they're not even acknowledging that someone else did it before.
It doesn't matter.
So
Doesn't, as long as they're doing it, the more the people are doing it, the better it is. As long as they're doing it, okay? And I agree. I mean, this is what happens over and over again, but I'm just glad, like, as long as it happens, as long as it happens. Even the secret life of plants, right? There's so many things about that we are discovering is true and that was discredited for so many years, and it doesn't matter as long as it's happening. That's what matters. I mean, I feel bad for Cleve Baxter and for others, but as long as it's happening, then we'll deal with credit and give support, but it has to happen.
Because of course, I also wasn't the first.
Yeah.
There is like a big chunk of humanity that has known this for a long time.
Yeah.
And so
I feel like that's a good segue to entanglement and lineage and why. Do you want to explain what this is? Like what?
What do you think? How does it feel? Huh? Has everyone attached it? Okay, all the blues, lift your hand. Orange, 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 orange. Oh, not many orange. Look at that. There must be a patch of something, a lichen or something that just grew there. This was, Rachel and I had a chat via Zoom, me in Australia, you here, just to have a chat in advance of what we could talk about. And as the conversation, I never thought of doing this until in the conversation, this thing emerged because I just read about Maria Lai, who is an artist, and I would say the pioneer or the precursor of relational art. And she comes from a little village she came because she passed away a few years ago, from a little village in the islands of Sardinia in Italy, and very conservative place, and she had her classical training as an artist, so she went to the big academia in Rome and Florence and all of this. And then, of course, like many of these Morgane, I would call them, she felt too restricted in that space, and she actually returned to her little village and her home and decided to do her artwork through weaving, which was the kind of traditional aspect of the culture where she was born into. And of course, she took her weaving to another world. And one of the famous things that she did was she bound people to their mountain. Legarsi alla montagna, I think is the title in Italian, which I saw it translated as connecting with the mountain, but it's more than connecting, it's literally tying you, binding you to the land, to the place. And she did it, again, not as a metaphor, literally. So she basically shared this denim ribbon. I think it was like 17 miles of denim ribbon. And it was done over 3 days. And it was done with all of the people in her village, about 1,000 people involved. And each one of them started stringing this ribbon through their houses and pass it on. And then eventually it got attached to the mountain. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine, even visually, you have this ribbon of connections, you know? And not only that, but some people, of course, in the village, as it happens, you know, like you have your friends, but you also have those families or the people, it's like, you don't even remember why, but like, we don't talk to them, you know? So Some people put beautiful ribbon, like, well, we are connected, but, you know. And when we were discussing this, I just thought, you know, I didn't actually thank you that you're still here. But I thought after 3 days intensively thinking together, speaking, listening, wouldn't it be nice to just maybe have something that it's a bit playful, but it materializes what we've been talking about? And so then we started thinking about the hazards of doing this. But I'm very grateful that Rachel said, okay, well, fine, let me work it out. So, and the question would be like, how easily you're gonna get untangled from this? And of course, this ribbon initially, and we talked about it yesterday, it's like, what is it? Is it cotton? I said, no, it's synthetic. And I was like, initially I thought, oh no, fantastic. Because this is really like our moment right now. It's
the fact that she said
synthetic.
fantastic, so Italian, because what she was trying to say was fantastico, ottimo. Sorry, I couldn't help it.
Like we live in a world where, you know, yeah, plastic is the thing, that it's everywhere and it keeps moving and connecting us. Like bottle, my shoes, like, so I thought, oh, it's even better now. And of course, I think that if it was cotton, you could probably, like, you know, rip it with your teeth or something. I don't know about the synthetic stuff, but that's your problem, not mine. And also, like, of course, this is a material invisible. So these connections, especially we've been spending 3 days together,
Tangible,
these connections
visible.
were already in place. They've been in place all the time. We're just making it, you know, visible now through these threads. And we've been talking about threads a lot. There've been lots of weaving of stories. So this was trying to bring it to the eye and bring it as, you know, an attempt of like, what is entanglement like? You can't say.
It kind of sucks by the looks of it. Well, it's a good reminder of the sort of like,
One is messy. Look at that.
not to romanticize interconnection. You
That's
know,
right.
that it's this alloy of competition, cooperation, and sometimes it's very inconvenient to be interconnected.
It
and
makes you
sometimes
trip.
Very
Watch
beautiful.
out.
No one trip. We've done a lot of thinking together, and I do need to end not with thinking, but with thanking.
Did it look like something just like
First
slid
of
and
all,
off it
thank you,
went?
Monica, for this
Thank
rich
you.
conversation.
Felt like we lost a piece of it. Interesting. But yes, thank you to Monica. Thank you for this. Although I have to say, I liked the well, hold on. Let's see what Rachel has to say, and then we're almost at the end.
It was beautiful, and I feel like we're just getting started. I really want to thank the AV team. This is the busiest time of the year, and we were like, hello, can we have a major 3-day conference? So thank you, Bob, Robert, everyone who works for you. A big thank you to the events team, to Lori, Bashwar, Sarah, all of our amazing volunteers. Thank you. To Gosha and to Charles for allowing this initiative to take root at the center. Thank you for trusting us and what we are up to. As Natalia said, finding science in a divinity school, a little strange. And thank you finally to our amazing team, Natalia, Russ, Alitza. There were 250 papers submitted to this conference, and we read them all.
I'm gonna stop that
so
part
I just
only
wanna thank all
because
of
we
you.
didn't watch the conference, and but you can, because oops, hold on. It's definitely a good conference. I'll definitely include the link to it. I don't know. I was so it was good to hear Monica recently. I've heard Monica speak many, many times over the years, but this was a good thing to hear her speak just recently. And while I like the direction she's going, because I really do feel I feel her connection to the earth, to the land, to the plants. I feel like what she speaks is coming from a genuine place of connection. I like that. But as a closing keynote, I found it a little meh. Like, she didn't talk about the orchid study to explain. She talked about the eclipse study, but she didn't. I don't know. I mean, I liked it. What do you think? Because I'm just curious. I like it, and at the same time, I'm a little, I don't know if the right word is disappointed. It's not the right word. I wanted more. I wanted more richness. I feel like there was a richness missing. I feel like it was still too, I don't know, maybe probably because it was bold given the, no, other people like Merlin Sheldrake's opening was much more, meh, had more, I don't know. Anyway, I'm curious as to what you thought about it. I'm going to go through the paper so that hopefully we can do the paper next time we meet. And I have so many good papers to go through. And I know that I promised you that I would start to pre-select and like pre-digest the papers so that we don't have to go through and listen to me read them from beginning to end. So I will start doing that. It's been a little bit of a hectic time, but I have every intention of doing that. And I'm just really appreciative that you're here, that you've listened. I want to hear what your thoughts are. I feel like these are such, it's a beautiful time for the more than human world in the sense that after a period, a long dark period, there is some light at the end of the tunnel. There is more understanding, and conferences like this sort of start to show us that there are new directions being forged and new paths and new understandings that are merging all forms of science, including the more esoteric sciences. So I'm excited about that. And I feel like the next coming 12 months are really going to open a lot of different paths, especially, I'm just going to say that. And of course, if you want to have this conversation, please, first and foremost, leave me a comment, but also come into the Naturally Conscious community, because that's the place where we're really getting deep into this. This is where we're poking around, we're exploring this on for ourselves, for our own lives, not just as a theoretical experiment, but as what does it mean for me in my everyday and the way that I relate myself and my interspecies communications and my relational relationships and all these different pieces that I think are so very important for us to explore and get deeper into. So I do hope that you're going to come into the Naturally Conscious community and have these conversations with us. Everything you need is in the show notes, more than anything, because we need to recognize that there are more ways. We need to recognize that there are ways of thinking and being, and that we are beings of nature. I feel like if we understood that we are beings of nature, so much of the world would be different. So yeah. Yeah. I'm excited. I'm excited about the next few months, and conferences like this make me super excited. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I want to hear all your thoughts on Monica's talk and on what she experienced. Like I said, I just feel like I can't even comment. I mean, I made some comments, some notes about certain things. But even very few, although I have to say that the one phrase that she brought up that I loved was the metaphysical of today is very tangible. And I do think that that's true. So I'm going to leave you with that. The metaphysical today is very tangible. So if you're looking for tangible, practical things, it's here, it's there, it's everywhere for you. So thank you again for being here. And remember, resist the urge to hold back your emerging green brilliance. That's it for me. Bye.